question was?
About your relationship with the president.
Oh, it's a good relationship.
Okay.
I have.
Do you think that Hillary Clinton has an advantage, though?
Well, she was Secretary of State with him for 4 years. Let me be very straight about this. This president will go down in history as one of the smartest presidents. So. He is also incredibly disciplined and focused. Now, you take it for granted.
Smart, too.
Smart, brilliant. But you're around the media every single day, and you have the opportunity to say dumb things. He does it very, very rarely. He is very focused. And he came to Vermont to campaign for me way back in 2006. I worked on his elections in 2008 and 2012. And, just was in the Oval Office a couple of months ago. So we have a very positive and I think friendly relationship. Is he closer to Hillary Clinton? I suspect.
That was Senator Bernie Sanders in an interview with supporter Spike Lee. And joining us from Chappaqua, New York, Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton.
Welcome home. You get to be home for 2 weeks.
I can't believe it. I am so excited to be in New York. And
that's got to be a relief.
Sleeping in my own bed.
Oh, my God. I know. I mean, to be able to sleep in your own bed, it's got to be a kind of a nice added benefit after all these months. Let me ask you a couple quick questions. We're going to ask about Wisconsin in a second, but we've been talking about Bernie Sanders' New York Daily News interview, and I want to start with that and ask you, in light of the interview, in light of the questions he had problems with, do you believe this morning that Bernie Sanders is qualified and ready to be president of the United States?
Well, I think the interview raised a lot of really serious questions. And I look at it this way. The core of his campaign has been break up the banks. And it didn't seem in reading his answers that he understood exactly how that would work under Dodd-Frank, exactly who would be responsible, what the criteria were. And, that means you can't really help people if you don't know how to do what you are campaigning on saying you want to do.
So is he? Is he qualified? I know there are a lot of examples of where he came up short, and the interviewers were having to repeat questions. So the question, and I'm serious, if you weren't running today and you looked at Bernie Sanders, would you say this guy is ready to be president of the United States?
Well, I think he hadn't done his homework, and he'd been talking for more than a year about doing things that he obviously hadn't really studied or understood, and that does raise a lot of questions. And really what it goes to is for voters to ask themselves, can he deliver what he's talking about? Can he really help people?
What do you think?
Can he help our economy? Can he keep our country strong? Well, obviously, I think I'm by far the better choice.
But do you think he is qualified, and do you think he is able to deliver on the things he is promising to all of these Democratic voters?
Well, let me put it this way, Joe. I think that what he has been saying about the core issue in his whole campaign doesn't seem to be rooted in an understanding of either the law or the practical ways you get something done. And I will leave it to voters to decide who of us can do the job that the country needs, who can do all aspects of the job, both on the economic, domestic issues and on national security and foreign policy.
So, Secretary Clinton, clearly some of the exit polls last night, and also the Bernie Sanders movement, these rallies that get these tens of thousands of people. Of course, there's a question as to whether they show up at the polls, but he's been doing well so far. How important are the members of the Bernie Sanders movement as you move forward and as you start to close this gap between you and him completely and rule him out as your opponent and win the nomination? How important is it to attract those voters, and how do you intend to do that?
Well, I think it's really important, and I do intend to reach out. I think we're in a very good position. He had a good night last night, and I give him credit for that. But I'm still significantly ahead in the popular vote, about 2.5 million more votes than he has, and significantly ahead in the delegate count, which is something that really is what's going to matter at the end. I remember back in 2008, I had a series of spring victories, but President Obama had an insurmountable lead, and it stayed that way. But at the end of it, I said, look, we are going to join together to elect Barack Obama president.
Yeah.
I made that very clear. I endorsed him. I nominated him. I told my delegates that they should support him. And I'm hoping to unify the Democratic Party at the end of this process when I have been able to clearly achieve the nomination.
You know, I was watching an interview that you did with Katie Couric, I think it was 1992, and you were saying some of the same things you're saying now, especially when it pertains to breaking down barriers, especially for women. When you look at the young women and the young people who are, you know, all going toward Bernie, how do you attract them, and why haven't you been able to so far? Because you have been saying, you have had a message that would resonate with them.
Look, I think it's exciting to be, in effect, protesting. I remember I did that a long time ago when I was in my 20s, and I totally get the attraction of this. And in all the research that I have seen about who is supporting Senator Sanders, a lot of the young people like both of us. They really like me, they admire what I've done, what I stand for, and they really, really like him. So I'm not as worried as the numbers might show about how he has attracted so many young people, because I think that it is important to bring them into the process, and I give him a lot of credit for doing that. My argument basically is, look, we are electing a president and a commander-in-chief. We are electing the Democratic Party standard bearer to go up against whoever the Republicans wind up nominating. And we really need to be sure that we elect someone who can walk into that Oval Office on January 20th, 2017, and start making decisions about people's lives and livelihoods. And when folks look at that, I feel very confident, both in the nominating process and in the general election.
So is it time for Bernie Sanders to reach the same conclusion, the same very difficult conclusion that you had to reach in 2008? That I've made my point, I fought the good fight, but now, if I go forward, it's going to hurt the Democratic Party. Is it time for Bernie Sanders to end his campaign, unite behind you so you can focus on Donald Trump or Ted Cruz?
Joe, I'm the last person who would tell anybody to walk away from a campaign, because I remember very well, and I think you commented on this quite a bit, people telling me not to go to the next contest, not to make my case.
Yes, and they were actually telling you that when you were winning states by 30 points. At thus, she has to pull up the stakes. That was quite a year.
That's the double standard in full flower, so I'm well aware of that. But and I appreciate it. Back in those days, you were one of my biggest defenders, that if I wanted to keep going, I definitely should.
Right.
So I feel the same way. I think it's up to Senator Sanders. I'm going to keep making my case, keep getting the delegates I need, because even last night I moved forward with delegates that I need. I'm excited about campaigning in New York, then on to Pennsylvania and the other states. I think what you saw in the New York Daily News raises questions for voters, and the front page of the News, which is one of my biggest contrasts with Senator Sanders, that he would place gun manufacturers' rights and immunity from liability against the parents of the children killed at Sandy Hook, is just unimaginable to me. So we have a lot to talk about. We're going to stay on the issues. We're going to draw the contrasts, and I'm excited about being able to really concentrate on making my case here in New York.
So there's a young woman who works for me who you have her vote, Emily. She's obsessed with you, Secretary Clinton, and actually that's why I was looking at old video. She was inspiring me to really take a close look at you over 10, 20, 30 years and all the different roles that you've had. How do you, though, I think the one area where Bernie Sanders is just pounding away, and he makes a good point, is about income inequality, the big banks, and then he kind of beautifully kind of creates a circle that actually brings criminal justice reform into the message. And people are really responding to that. And in some areas, some may say you have a trust issue with that. How do you bridge that? How do you really gain the trust in those areas? And don't get mad at me, but does Elizabeth Warren?
Oh, my Lord.
Does Elizabeth Warren have a role in a Clinton White House?
She cannot get through an interview without bringing that name up.
She is a vehicle for
you know
that, for that message.
But both of us really admire her, so I am
totally
looking forward to working with her closely. Look, I want to say this. You know, I understand the argument that's made, but I want people to look at it from my perspective. I have a record on these issues. I don't know where anybody else was, but I was calling for closing loopholes. I was calling for holding CEOs accountable. I was saying it directly to Wall Street back in 06, 07, 08. I now have what everybody who's looked at it from an independent perspective concluded, the single best, most comprehensive, top to bottom plan to make sure what happened to us in 07, 08 doesn't happen again. The fact that I have a record, I have a plan, and I am committed to doing it, and I actually know what I'm talking about, I think is pretty convincing. So I'm going to keep talking about it.
See, it's the top of the hour. Chuck and Savannah are standing by to take over coverage, but we are right now talking to Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton, a woman with a voice of a candidate who has been at rallies and doing speeches and working 24/7. We can hear it, and we thank you for being on with us.
Yeah, thank you for being with us, and of course, we'll be late tossing to Chuck again, as I have, because I'm not really good with not good with time.
Good to talk to you both. Thanks for making time. Appreciate it.
It's great talking to you, too. Let me ask you one final question about Bernie Sanders. Is Bernie a Democrat? Do you consider Bernie a Democrat?
Well, I think he himself doesn't consider himself to be a Democrat. And, you know, look, he's raised a lot of important issues that the Democratic Party agrees with, income inequality first and foremost. But it's up to the Democratic primary voters to make that assessment. I've been in the trenches for a long time, and I believe in electing Democrats up and down the ticket. I want to see the United States Senate move back into Democratic hands with my friend Chuck Schumer as the majority leader. So I'm going to keep working and fighting for all Democrats.
All right. Hillary Clinton, thank you very much. And I'm sure we will be seeing you over the next couple weeks.
I look forward to it. Thanks to you both.
Take care. Thank you.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.